Good afternoon, all the shifters of the house. Okay, we need a theme song. So if anyone's listening and you want to do a theme song for our Shift Happens show, and be shifty, let's shift on, brothers. Shift on. Welcome to season.
Welcome. Here we are.
4. Episode.
Season 3.
Okay,
I think. Season 3, episode 2 or 3, something like that. We're here. It doesn't matter what the number is. And it's a clean cut. So
clean cut version.
You know, we're really challenging ourselves. Clean cut version 2 in a row. So we're cutting loose next episode in 2 weeks. But
you bet.
We really want to talk to parents. We want to talk to families, people who care about teens. And that's especially what we'll be talking about today. But first, what's new and groovy with you, Cari?
New and groovy. Merry Christmas.
Because February.
Because in Calgary, it's been snowing and snowing and snowing the past few days, and it's been really cold. It's it got down to minus 23 the other day, minus 14 now. Celsius. Fahrenheit, it's like minus 9. So, and our guest is from the States. So that's what we're dealing with up here.
And, I'm in Mexico currently. So.
You're where?
I'm in Mexico.
Oh, you ran back, did you?
I did. I saw that deep freeze coming. I'm like, I am out of here. No, I had it planned ahead of time. It was just good timing.
Oh, I see. Well, I wasn't invited to do the show over there. What's with that?
I do have a friend of mine here that will be joining us. She's been a guest on the show in the past, and she happens to be a mother of teens. 1 for sure, right? 2 maybe.
Maybe 3.
How many teens have you got? We'll figure it out. Yep, she's got some.
Just a couple kicking
around. She's got earbuds in, so I'm just rolling with it.
What?
There's 4 kids out
like the teens do. What?
Lots of experience with teens. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. She's here without them, so you know what? It's mom time. So I agree with that. Let's bring on this amazing gentleman. We've both had him on our show, and I don't even remember how I met him. I don't know how you met him, but
I met him through you.
More about who he is, but what impressed me is his heart for teens, and that's a very special set of people in my heart too. And I just feel they're stuck in this limbo between adulthood and childhood. They're expected to act mature and responsible and like adults, and yet they're not allowed to act like children, and they're confused. They're going through hormonal roller coasters and all that stuff, and they need to know that they matter, and they're loved, and they're admired, and they're respected, and that they're contributing, but they also are still learning. So I appreciate how John has been involved in the school system as well, and what he has discovered by working with them in groups. And he's written a book about it.
Yeah, he's been on my show a couple times, which is fun and fabulous, because he was just on Underground Radio C, and then I had him back for Connected with Cari not too long ago. And because that was an interesting topic to me, was his counseling services and just all the different stories that he's been writing about and incorporating them and going, okay, this is what some teens have been through. And like we said, they're going through a lot. Yes, we ourselves as adults go through a lot. However, we understand the hormone thing. Like, we know, but they don't. Right. And it's crazy because they just don't know. One day, everything seems fine. And then the next, it's like they're so depressed and they have no idea why, but life is sort of normal. Right. So it's like, why am I feeling so sad today? And it's just probably a hormone thing. Right. But they don't know. So yeah, his chapters they're all, different stories of different teenagers that have been through many different stories. He'll come on and he could talk about that soon here. But yeah, I just also loved the fact that he's been doing this whole grocery store type of yeah, I don't know how you kind of call it, but like a promo. So you sit at a grocery store and at the table, and he's been there, selling his books, more or less promoting his books, not like, hey, sell, 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 but giving the public some information about his book that it may be able to help those teenagers in their life. And these are some relatable stories going on. So I really appreciated him going out there and, doing that, because it's hard to call around, be able to sit down. And I remember doing fundraising with my kids, and we had to go store to store, and it was just like, ugh. So for him to be able to just, call and set that up, and they had a program, Kroger's grocery stores has a program where authors can go and set up their tables and do that. And I thought that's really cool. And it's just like, because a lot of people grocery shop, they may or may not have their kids with them, but it is a place where teenagers will go, right? Whether they're by themselves or whether they're with their families, most of the time they will go. And then there's people with teenagers that will go shop and go, oh yeah, my kids or my grandparents, would like this book, or, it's very relatable. And then it's not a place that you would think there was going to be a book, right? You walk into the grocery store, you're waiting for like the Girl Guide selling their cookies, but you're not expecting someone with a book. So it kind of catches your eye, I think. And I think it's smart to be able to do that. So, John, let's get you on here, and welcome to The Shift Happens, where all the shift happens all the time, mostly to me. Just saying.
It's a real shift show.
It is. It's a real shift show. We get down and shifty.
We'd love to hear from you, John, what brought you to doing the work that you did, and why that was intriguing to you, why you felt called to do that, because I feel like that's a special calling.
When I was in graduate school, I initially, for my master's degree, I was in clinical psychology, which hit the whole gamut from kids through adulthood. And I did my internship at that point in time, it was in/out/patient psychiatric hospital up in Pontiac, Michigan. And I didn't enjoy working. It sounds terrible, but I didn't enjoy working with the adults at all. I enjoyed working with the kids. And, so I immediately, when I finished my master's degree, I got myself certified as a school psychologist and worked a traditional school psychology role for about my first 10 years. But I did go back after working about 5 years and got my PhD in school psychology. And after having that for several years, I saw that, and this is not to beat up school psychologists. They do a very important job, but it wasn't for me. School psychology in the States anyways, for most school psychologists, it all centers around special education and evaluations and paperwork and that kind of stuff. I felt like I wasn't touching very many kids, but yet I always saw that there was a disproportionate number of kids who I was seeing, even doing evaluations, and just when people would come in to consult about whatever, this, that, or whatever, who came from split up families. Just an awful lot of those kids were some of them were being referred for special services in school, and a lot of them, they weren't handicapped in the learning sense. They were having troubles in school because they had stuff going on in their lives which were impacting their ability to perform up to par in a traditional classroom. So, I kind of took the switch over after about 10 years, took a lot of grief from some of my fellow school psychologists that why are you doing this, switching to the counseling department? Because in the hierarchy of working in the schools, the counseling department is a notch below school psychologists for most in those schools. But it didn't matter to me. That's where I thought I could have the biggest impact. And that's where I stayed for really, I worked for 40 years, for 32 of them I worked more in the guidance department. And it was good. What can I say? And I think I mentioned this to you when I talked to you, both of you, previously. Early on, when I was still working as a school psychologist, there's a place in Cincinnati called Beach Acres, which was offering training on running divorce groups in schools. So I went to the training, and that further hooked me on wanting to make that change. And although I ran a few of those groups when I was working as a school psychologist, they didn't have a whole lot of time to do it. I had too many other jobs I had to do. But when I moved to the counseling department, then I had plenty of time to do it. And that's really where I really began to learn more and more about these young kids. And I think I mentioned, most of my time was spent with middle school age children, some in high schools, but most of it was middle school age students. So I was, that 12, 13, 14, some 15-year-olds. And I said I did do some work in the high school, but not very much. I did different stuff in the high school. But, I just kind of got sunk into that group of kids. Now, in terms of you were mentioning the book a few minutes ago, I mean, it was something I always had a dream of doing, but I just didn't. And then when the COVID lockdown occurred and I got sent home from work, at that point in time, I was still working part-time. I sat down and wrote. And shall we say the rest is history? I didn't have a whole lot of faith that it was any good. But then I took it out to different professionals to read, and they said, this is worth it. So we did all the kind of fun stuff, which you really don't want to do, to get a book published, because it's not easy. It's hard. It's a lot of work and a lot of frustrations, but it's out there. And you were mentioning the grocery store thing. I mean, I'm not part of that program this year because a year of going to grocery stores twice a week was about as much as I could take. Yeah. But the book sold. I mean, in terms of the 400 some people that are, I think it was 400 some people that are actually part of that grocery store program, I had the second highest selling book of everybody who was participating in that program. Not that it's a great book, but it told me that it was connecting with people. Because one of the things I had on my little table in the grocery stores, and we were sitting right by the door, so a lot of people passed you, and I had meet the characters, and on that sign, it had every character in the book with just a phrase about them, like meet JT as he enters his fourth foster home, or meet who am I thinking of? Meet Natalie as she deals with her parents' alcoholism. And parents would come up, mostly adults would come up, and they would look at that sign and they'd say, that's my family, that's my family, that's my family. I had people break down in tears. I had people who I felt like I was doing a counseling session in Kroger's. Because actually my wife at one point in time, she said, did you do any Kroger counseling today? Because I would have lots and lots of people who would tell me their life stories here in the entranceway to Kroger's, which was kind of weird. It took me a little while to get used to that. But I found it beneficial, and people kind of, they defined me over the first couple of months, because after a while, and I forget, this one lady was there, she says, this is kind of like your mission, isn't it? And I really hadn't thought about it that way before. But then that phrase or something like that began to occur more and more. And I think it's because I maybe got a little more pumped up doing these, because I'm not a salesman. I knew what I was doing sitting there. And it really took me about 3 months to get my pitch down, because if I look back at my book sales, and about 3 to 4 months into it, my book sales were going up 5 or 6 books a day over what I had been selling prior to that. And it was focusing more on the kids, focusing more on what I hoped to do, focusing more on the people that were talking to me, most of them were adults. Very few kids came in and bought the book around. Sometimes mom and dad would be sitting there with a youngster, and they'd turn to the kid and they'd say, hey, you want to read this? And the kid would nod his head, or his or her head, and they'd pick it up. But a lot of adults bought it for themselves and bought it for somebody else, my grandkid, my niece, my whomever. So that's kind of how we got how we got rolling. I miss it, to be honest with you, even though I'm not doing it here in 2025. I do kind of miss it, and book sales are now virtually non-existent again, as they had been prior to being in that setting. They're starting a little bit. Got lots of 5-star reviews on the book site, and there is another site which supposedly is going to put the book online, but it just isn't up and running yet. It's connected with the Authors in Grocery Stores program. It was supposed to be ready January 1st. It isn't ready yet, so we'll see how that works.
So John, tell us about the book. We've got people really curious, that there's obviously interest from people. Tell us about the book. What's in it? What's in the covers?
The book consists of 7 short stories. They're all teenagers telling their family situation in a flashback fashion. The characters in the book range from 8th grade through senior in high school. Several of the stories are single parent families. like for example, one of the young characters, when she introduces herself, she says, I live with my two stepsisters. We all have different daddies, and so a couple of the stories, you would probably guess from reading them that they're probably kids who are more from inner city, a little rougher neighborhoods. And I got a couple stories in the book from kids who were definitely in the burbs and middle income type families, maybe professional families. And the purpose again for writing it is one of the things I heard over and over again from kids for many, many years is I thought I was the only one that went through this kind of stuff. And part of the purpose of the book was to give kids a realization that they're not the only ones that go through that kind of stuff. And also they hopefully get a few ideas on how the characters in the book coped with their particular situation. There's not a whole lot of that in there. I mean, some parents, when they were at my sales table, shall we say, and they say, well, do you have a lot of suggestions for what we should do? And I said, not directly. A fair amount of that in the afterword, in terms of directing parents in directions which they may be able to find help for their youngsters and themselves. But a big part of it was showing that they're not alone, and they might get a few ideas from what some of the kids in the book did. And also, and in the secondary audience, was the parents themselves, because lots of parents don't realize what their kids are going through when the split up is occurring. One of the things I found really fascinating about the middle of June last summer. So I had been going into the grocery stores. I started at the end of January, and I was gone for a couple of weeks in May. So about 5 months I'd been going to school. From about that point on, I was rarely in a grocery store where somebody didn't come up to me and say, I bought your book at another store over in another neighborhood. I loved it. I gave it to my kids. Whatever, and that was occurring on a pretty regular basis, sometimes as many as 2 or 3 people in a particular day. Usually it was one, but every once in a while there were 2 or 3 people that came up, and then they told me how they liked it and why it was a benefit to them. And from the parent's standpoint, it frequently was, I had no idea my kids were going through this. I just thought they were fine because they acted like everything was fine, or they were just moody, and they're teenagers. They're moody anyways. That's what teenagers are. But so that was pretty rewarding to have those folks come up. One day I was walking across the. I was not doing book sales because I shop at Kroger's, and I was walking across the parking lot. The Kroger's where my wife and I mostly shop. And I'm walking towards this woman, and this woman's looking at me real straight. And all of a sudden she gets this big smile on her face, and she says, "You're that author guy, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, I bought your book over at the Delhi store about 2 months ago." And then she went on to tell me how much so it was weird. It wasn't even always in the store. One time it was out in the parking lot. It was pretty strange, but again, kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's amazing. And the fact that you're going to touch lives, you will never know the ripple that this has created. Yeah. And hey, good pitch. That was good. I wanted to hear the pitch that you've got dialed in. For anybody listening to the replay or live, what are some things that you would suggest from a basic communication with teenager advice, like whether there is a separation, whether there is a divorce, whether there's some difficult thing they're navigating? Can we start there and then kind of expand on that?
Jump in anytime. Yeah. I think first of all, you have too many parents have forgotten what teenagers are in general. And you touched on a little bit of that when we first came on. They forget that, one day they treat their youngster like they're an adult, and the next moment they treat them like they're a third grader, and that's a hard thing for youngsters to navigate themselves. I think sometimes I get a little tired of hearing, "Oh, they're just hormonal." Well, they are, but that's not everything that's going on. They've got a lot of challenges in life. And when you throw in a family that's in turmoil, those challenges just increase a lot. I think what parents forget is just watch your kids, listen to your kids. They just don't do that very well. I mean, any one of us has seen, whether it's a youngster or an adult, we can tell sometimes their mood, or at least guess at it when they walk through the door. You know, they're up, they're down, they're happy, they're whatever the case may be. And I think sometimes we forget to do that.
Yeah.
You know, kids, teenagers have a hard time labeling their feelings. And I think that parents often decide what the kid's feeling, and then they treat them accordingly, instead of trying to do a little exploring as to what the youngster might actually have going on with them at a particular point in time. You know, parents, one of the things I keep telling parents to quit playing 20 questions with your kid. You know, the problem with questions is you're supposed to give an answer. And you know, think about it. When you ask, even as an adult, if somebody comes up to you at your work and says they asked you a question, and maybe you don't want to answer, or you feel, you know, a little bit defensive about it, you're expected to give an answer. And then when you think about a parent teenager, it's a completely different hierarchy. You got mom or dad up here, and you got the kid down here. There's a power thing going on from the start. So when you get that teenager and you start asking them questions, you're immediate. Not every teenager, every kid, there's exceptions to everything I say, but you're immediately putting them on the defensive, you know, especially if things aren't really going great. It just turns them off. You know, how many times, and again, I've got 2 kids. Now my kids are adults now. What are they, 39 and 42. You know, I think when they were younger, you know, sometimes you want to play that 20 question thing with them. Or how many times did they storm out of the room when you were touching on things they didn't want to touch on? Because again, we were kind of hammering away on what's wrong with you. How come this happened? How come that happened? You know, and immediately you're kind of building a brick wall with them. And then we get mad because as adults, because why won't you answer me? Why won't they talk to me? Well, because you just ticked them off. You know, you just put
In a
them
nutshell. Yeah.
yeah. It's tough. You know, what I constantly talk about, and we did this with kids in groups occasionally, it depended on, each group was different, but don't ask so many questions, make statements. You know, let's just give it for an example. Your youngster comes in from school and is in a really kind of crummy mood. Rather than saying, "What happened at school today?"
Yeah.
School was tough today, wasn't it? Little less threatening. Or school today, eh? It's not a question. It's more of a statement, but in a lot of it, in how you say it, is purely the intonation of your voice. You know, a lot of questions you can turn into statements just by making them a little flatter in how you say it. And it gives them an opportunity to think as to whether or not they want to respond or not. And don't expect a response. Don't expect a response. If you can, and it's really hard to do because we don't do that very well. When I say we, I mean us adults. But if you do it over and over and over and over again, and you start reacting to your teen that way, some of them will start to respond in time, because you're not pushing them into a corner. You're not pressuring them to answer. And that can also, I brought up the feelings a few minutes ago. Boy, tough day at school. You know, kind of sad today. That's different than, are you sad today? You're getting at the exact same thing, but it's a different approach to getting the answer. And you know, I remember really early on in my training, this one guy, he was a professor over a practical type of class, and he said, "Don't be afraid to guess at how they're feeling, because if you get it wrong, they'll tell you." You look really ticked off today. Boy, something really good must have happened today.
Yeah.
That's different than what good happened today. You're getting at the exact, and if you're wrong, if they're not ticked off when you say something, we tend to focus on the negative. You know, they'll tell you, "No, I'm not mad. But I'm sad because, you know, my best friend did blah 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 at school today, and I don't think he or she's going to be my best friend again anymore."
Yeah.
You're getting at the same thing, but it's a different approach to getting at it.
Almost
less
reverse
threatening.
psychology.
Well, a little bit. You could call it that, but it's just less threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And again, think about teenagers.
Yeah.
They don't like to be pushed in a corner. nobody does, but
No,
teenagers are
no
probably
one.
a little bit more sensitive about that than, some of us can just kind of blow it off and whatever. But teenagers are probably a little more concerned about that type of thing, or might react a little bit more negatively to it.
Right.
Um, I mean, even the youngster comes back. Let's say there is a divorce, and the youngster comes back to dad's house after a visit to mom, and they're in a crummy mood. What did dad do to you today? Not do to you, but what happened to dad's today? What went
Yeah.
on over there?
Yeah.
I've noticed the last 2 weekends when you come home from there, you've been in a really crummy mood. What's going on over there?
Yeah.
Versus, not a great trip today. Tough visitation. It's a little bit different. You'd
Yeah.
like an answer, but you're not pushing so much to get an answer.
hmm Yeah, because I think it also teaches teens how to project as well
Mm-hmm.
when they start getting a little bit older and going, okay, then they tend to, like I said, you're putting that blame on somebody else, going, oh, well, it's because mom and dad were fighting. That's why I'm in a bad mood. But
Mm-hmm.
it could have actually been just the fact that they got up late or they're in a rush or they're
Yeah.
whatever. But they're like, oh, I can easily go scapegoat mom and dad because that's just easy to do.
It is.
So, yeah, that's where I kind of also can see that. But it's true. I think oftentimes parents will call out one or the other as well. So, let's not play that blame game because that can go on to the kids as well. Like I said, it can cause a nasty, game that way as well. So, but I do like that. I do like the fact that we can sit back and just totally go a different route instead of saying, what happened? What did he do? Or what did mom do? What did dad do? This or that. Be like, okay, well, your trip didn't go that good. Or
Mm-hmm.
did you guys have fun on the weekend? You could totally change it around completely and
Well,
make it more fun. Because I think, the fun aspect of a teenager is slowly leaving them too.
mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you had one thing this came up frequently. You had to teach them to stick up for themselves.
hmm
Um,
Yes.
and,
Amen.
and that is the example I'll use here is kids would frequently tell me things like mom or dad would ask, well, what happened over there? Or what's mom's new boyfriend like? Or did you just have to sit around all day? Because that's a common thing when kids get to be teenagers. They still go into visitations, and you can take them to McDonald's in a movie when they're 7, but when they're 13, who cares? Um,
I still like McDonald's in
and
movies.
or tell dad this or tell mom this. Would you give this to mom today, or would you give this to dad today? And
Yeah.
I tell with many kids, we practice them saying, I'm not your messenger. You call him yourself.
Yeah.
Or it really upsets me that you think I can be your, again, projecting, tell them how you're feeling. This really upsets me, Dad, when you want me to give this messages to mom. I'm tired of being your messenger, the mailman. You do it yourself. Or same thing with the mom. I'm tired of you always asking about dad's new girlfriend. It really upsets me. I kind of like the lady. You have problems with her. You call her and ask her. But
hmm
again, the youngster's doing two things. They're standing up for themselves, and also they're telling mom, this really upsets me when you bug me with these types of questions. That's something we would practice that with kids, being strong and standing up, and throwing the feeling word in is real important. One of the things I did when I ran some parent groups as well as also the kids group is when you're throwing in a feeling word, there's kind of a little format. I feel blank because blank. So you don't just say I'm really mad today, or I'm really happy today, or I'm really excited about today. Put the because part back into it.
Yeah.
I'm really happy today because I got an A on my social studies test, or whatever. Or if they're visiting, I'm really happy today because Dan finally did what I wanted to do when we visited. Or I'm really angry today because I went over to visit mom, and we always do what she and her boyfriend want to do, and we never do what I want to do. I hate it. I can't wait to leave when I walk in the door.
Yeah.
This is so important because it helps them identify that formula for themselves even. And as they feel strong enough to speak it and have the courage to speak it, feel safe to speak that to a parent, which would be difficult in itself. But the first part of that the first part of that is even identifying it for themselves. I'm
Yeah.
feeling this because of this.
Yeah.
And maybe even how have I contributed, or how could I see this differently? Or maybe by expressing it, it helps clarify.
Mhm.
And maybe they've misconceived how this was meant, or how
Mhm.
something was happening. And it's an opportunity to clarify and clear the air a little bit too, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I think also when they do start a sentence like that as well, it gives them a chance to process what it was actually from
Mhm.
as well. Like Deena said, you know, they're giving that chance to be able to go back and just really think and go and just, you know, they're what's the word I'm going to look for? It's like they're discovering it for themselves instead of
Mhm.
somebody else saying, "Oh, you're mad because this," where it's not that at all. They're maybe, well, I'm not
Yeah.
mad. I'm
Yeah.
more upset
Yeah.
because we were late or this happened or whatever,
Yeah,
right? So and yeah,
physically, we sometimes look, we display the same physical behaviors, face or voice tone for a variety of different emotions.
mm,
So you know that's why you kind of got to label it. Labeling it makes it a whole lot more real for both sides, because it's not really fair to the parent to be thinking one thing when you're feeling something entirely different, and also for the kid. You know, this goes two ways. You
yeah,
know, sometimes you get some parents that are really struggling with things, and we practice that with the kids sometimes in these groups about, you know, when you see mom or dad or whoever in the family is upset, try talking like this. See what happens. It's funny because another thing, for 10 years I volunteered at this one place in Cincinnati called Fernside, and it's a grieving center for families that have a death. It's designed for kids, and there's 4 or 5 sites around Cincinnati where this occurred, and these groups meet twice a month. It's a really neat organization. But while the kids went with their various groups at the same age, you know, because I meet with kindergartners and first graders together, second and third graders together, they do their thing. I met with parents, and we talked about these types of communication skills every year with parents, because you get different groups every year, because it basically ran a school year. It started in September and ended in June. Some parents would come back for a year too, but most came for a year. And again, I had a number of parents over the years say, you know, I tried that thing and it works. You know, we've been trying that for the last month, and you know, my daughter suddenly, or my son, or whomever, they're kind of starting to respond to us a little bit more, because, you know, again, there's a lot of similarities between what kids go through when there's a death in the family is when their parents split up. A lot of similarities. You know, it's the end of something. Things aren't the way they used to be. I may miss the person who I'm not living with, or whatever. So there's a lot of big changes that occur in both situations. So you know, we tried to teach some of those skills, and it didn't happen often, but there were a handful of times over those 10 years when I did that where these parents would come back and say, "That really worked." No kidding.
The
Yeah.
other thing I love about this, John, this approach, is the compassion that's being built, and also that kids feel seen. So
Mhm.
by naming it and opening that conversation, it's like, I see you, and this is what I think's happening.
Mhm.
Just making that statement,
Mhm.
and then the teen has a chance to either ignore it or
Yeah.
respond but at least they feel like somebody noticed me, and they noticed
yes,
You got it.
something.
You got it. Somebody
And
knows.
then
exactly, yeah,
what I love is that you've also created an awareness that they can be doing that for others too, because
Mhm.
they might feel very invisible and helpless to help. They see a parent or a friend or a family member or somebody they care about struggling, and they think, well, I'm just a kid, like nobody's, like, I can't help, there's nothing I can do to help. But if you tell them, like, yes, you're noticing, and
Mhm.
you care, so this is
Yeah.
something you could
You
do to
count.
open that
right,
Yeah.
conversation. You
yeah,
count, you can talk to people
Yeah.
about that, and step up and ask. It's okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
And people
Oh,
are
yeah.
really going, you know how it feels if somebody sees you, so for you to see someone else
Mhm.
is caring and love and kindness,
Yeah.
compassion.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of funny. This past year, I went and did a presentation on the book at a high school where I don't know if I mentioned this, for 8 years, I worked in a Catholic grade school after I retired from the public schools. It was part-time. And the majority of these kids also go to the same Catholic high school. They go to a couple Catholic high schools, but the majority of them go to this one particular high school. And I went there and made a presentation on the book in their creative writing class. So I ran, and I told a couple of the kids that I was going to be there, and a bunch of them were there around it. We're kind of talking, they were seniors, and they were all going to college during this current year. And you're kind of talking, what are you planning on doing? You'd be surprised how many of them were talking about going into the people professions. And I just kind of think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if being in our particular group played a little role in that.
Yeah.
And I also had those kids in a program at the grade school, the Catholic grade school, is called the Kindness Project, which I happened to start with the group of kids who were last year seniors in high school. And every one of them just stepped up to the plate. And it was a really neat project, which we did in the school. But again, it was a outwards people type of program. They were teaching kids that they, as 8th graders, were teaching things to the younger 4th through 6th grade, going into classrooms once a month with activities. And again, that particular group of kids, everybody from the divorce group happened to be in the Kindness Project, plus about 10 other kids. And now they're going off to college, and there were more than a few of them that were talking about going into the health professions, whether it was psychology, social work, counseling, those particular areas, which I just kind of thought, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, like Deena said, they're being heard in their statements, and they're being not just heard, but seen, right? That's what they want. But now they're sending these messages on to the younger generations going, hey, but I just stepping into that role for teenagers going, hey, they feel important, and they do feel heard and listen. Like, that's what they really want. And you have to, even when they get delegated something, they really take that responsibility on, and they quite embrace it and enjoy it and go, oh yeah, like, my mom and dad entrusted me with doing this, or they asked me to do this, a teacher asked me to do this, or the counselor wanted me to start this group, and that's all they want, is they just want to be, a part of the community. And
that's it exactly.
Amazing.
When I left this particular Catholic school, when I left the public schools, I left angry. I mean, I retired in Ohio. After you get 30 years in, you're working for nothing beyond 30 years because the pension, it's a really good pension system. But I quit for 2 years, and then I went back and worked part-time in this Catholic school. And when I left the public schools, I left in the middle of summer. I didn't get to say goodbye to anybody. I was just an angry person. But we won't go into that. but
you want to express your feelings, John, it's okay. We are more than happy
offline, we can talk about that.
You feel angry and upset because
but when I was in the
this
Catholic
is your
school,
example.
the final year-end lunch after the last day of school. So I told the principal, I said, I'm going to address the faculty. And only a couple faculty members knew I was leaving. But I talked a little bit about the Kindness Project, which kind of got screwed up because of COVID, as so many things did, because we couldn't do what we normally did. But I said, it wasn't that the Kindness Project was terribly successful in terms of changing the mood in the school, because we just couldn't do everything we wanted to do because of COVID. The second year got all messed up. I says, but you had to watch the growth in the kids that were part of the Kindness Project, the ones that were going into the classrooms. They, like you said, they wanted to belong. They wanted to be important. They took that project and they ran with it. And I sat back and watching them grow up from September, when some of them were terrified to go into a 4th or 5th or 6th grade classroom and do activities with them, to January, when they were hip, they were going in. They even modified some of the things which I planned for them, because they just took it over. And that, again, it's that recognition. It's letting them realize that they do have skills, that people like them, that people realize that they can do things on their own, and that's what worked. Yeah. You look back at your career, and you find 3 or 4 things which you did, and you say that was really cool. Well, the Kindness Project was one of the 4 things which I would, if somebody asked what are the 4 things you did, that would be one of the things, which I'd say that was cool. And COVID screwed it all up.
John, have you considered creating a guide for others to replicate that Kindness Project in their
Kindness Project?
Yeah.
No, I really hadn't. I came up. pretty much did all the activities, and I scoured the internet to find activities, which then I adjusted to fit what I wanted to have happen. But no, I haven't. I mean, when I'm working, I don't know if I mentioned to either of you what I'm working on right now, and I'm sitting here. I don't want to say frustrated, but frustrated is
Okay.
I took the play, or I took the book and I turned it into a play.
Right. Yes, you did
We
mention
talked
that.
about
Yeah. Yeah.
And right now it's sitting in the hands of several play people from Cincinnati, and it's being reviewed. And what I did with the book was first of all, to make it work for the play, I had to make all the kids the same age, so they're all seniors in high school for the play. But the play is a divorce group taking place on stage, and it's a bunch of real short vignettes, lights up, lights down, lights up, lights down, where the kids discuss a different topic area. And I think it works, but I'm like I said, right now it was handed out over Christmas to several people, and I'm anxiously awaiting them because I want to know if it's any good. It's just like when I wrote the book, I didn't know if it ain't good.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sure it's going to be good. And I thought that was such a marvelous idea that, they turn into like little mini scripts, be
Yeah.
able to take it not just to schools, but even to, different centers, mental health centers, even whatever, just to kind of play out different scenarios, different roles. Like, what would you do in a situation that your best friend feels suicidal?
Right.
How would you, do that? So when someone's watching this play and they're like, oh, first of all, they may have never thought someone would ever be suicidal.
Mhm.
And second of all, maybe there is someone there that's like, oh yeah, my friend has been there, or I
Yeah.
myself have been there,
It-
and
It can save
just
this.
how to play it out.
It serves
Yeah.
kind of the same purpose as the book.
Mhm.
And I think we talked about my goal was to take it into high schools.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I've even been told by several people I've discussed this with, you could probably get some grant money and do this to take it
Yeah.
into high schools, but not with our current. We won't talk about that guy.
Yeah, it's
But
okay.
there is grant money out there from various foundations and that. And I'm kind of pumped about it, but right now I've got to wait and see how it works. The difference between the play and the book is one of the comments I had about the book, and it wasn't often, but occasionally people would ask this to me: what happened to these kids?
Right.
Yes, a
So
sequel.
what we do with the book, or with the play, that is the final scene when the kids are kind of all hugging. It's the end of the school year and they leave. The moderator, who I called Dr. K, under Dr. C, changed his name. He's wandering around stage, kind of cleaning up, and he says, he recognizes the fact. He said, wonder whatever happens to these kids. And all of a sudden, they come back on stage one at a time, and it's 10 years later, and they each do a little ditty about where they are, and they kind of fit. Some of them fit real well with the story, like the kid who was in foster care. He became a social worker.
Yeah.
And the kid whose mom quit nursing school because she had this kid to raise on her own, became a nurse. And they're not all professionals. One of them works at Kroger's. I thought that was kind of funny. And we have
How
one kid that
convenient.
doesn't show up because he went in the wrong direction. And Dr. C at the end says, you probably noticed that there's only 6 people up here. There are 7 people in our group. Well, this is what happened with Sean. He tells how he found out about Sean, and I think it even brings it gives a little hope, because Sean, 1 out of 7 is the only one that's negative. All the others are pretty positive, very positive, really. I mean, but they're not all professionals. One of them, they work in some kind of funny jobs, but they're getting through life.
Yeah.
And it's realistic. People would.
Well, it is.
It's more realistic to be, what are closer to the stats, maybe, of what. And what a beautiful, brilliant way to wrap that up and closure around what
It is a
happened.
great idea.
As I said, I'm anxiously on the edge of my seat, and I'm trying not to get angry at a few people that I know in the theater business. That let's get it back to.
Keep
Give
going.
me an answer.
Don't
Well,
take
they're
no's for
probably
an
talking to
answer.
other people. Yeah.
Don't take no's for an answer, John. I feel like this needs to be heard, and somebody will see the
We'll
value.
get a copy of it to you guys if this actually comes to be, because my daughter actually runs a video production company.
Yeah.
And she has volunteered actually. She says, if you can get a group to do this that is high quality, we will videotape it, and then we'll we'll do a trailer for it, and we can go from there.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
it's about time she does something.
Right. No, hold on. If she's oh no, she's not a teenager anymore. Never mind.
But that's kind of where it is right now. I'm kind of in a holding pattern, you know.
Yeah, but sometimes that's good
No, it
because
is not in the winter. It isn't, not for me. I get bored.
I just kind of think it gives some opportunity to keep you thinking on things and what's good, and other opportunities may come up as well, right? So if
Oops,
it's
I
not,
lost you here. Hang on.
oh,
Lost
Go
his
for
ears. Fell off his
did
head.
you lose your ears? Oh, I was just saying how, this could be another way
Well, that's
to see different opportunities with it as well, right? So if it's not in the school, it could be out on the video, or it could
well,
take,
that's kind of what I'm. That's the
yeah,
goal. I mean, the goal is to, and my secondary goal, besides just having kids see this in the school and maybe being able to identify with it and maybe feel a little better about themselves, my secondary goal is to poke the bear, and the bear is the schools. So that maybe a parent would call up and say, my kid just saw this play today in school. Do we do anything like this at our school?
Yes.
It's
you
the
could
poke.
call yourself.
You know what I'm envisioning too? Like this just popped into my head. Maybe this can come out as each vignette is a episode in a little mini series, whether it's on YouTube or whatever, and they have these little vignettes, and it becomes a little like a seasonal thing. And then this could grow, and then you could do more than 7. And the next season, maybe do another 5 or whatever. And I'm sure in the years you've worked, you've got a lot of material to pull from.
Oh yeah. Well, my wife, who obviously read it, said it's too long, and I've cut it back and cut it back and cut it back, and she says it's either you're either have to make it really short, cut a whole bunch more, and it's going to be 1 act, or if you keep it at the same length, it's probably going to have to be 2 acts. And there's like 8 sessions. Some of them, the only one that's really long is the first one, because that's when they're telling their stories.
Yeah.
Some of the others aren't 3 minutes long. The girl that was sexually abused. She mentions that at the end of one session, lights down, and in the next session, the kids say, "Natalie, what happened? I've been meaning to ask you, but I was embarrassed to come up to you in the hallway and ask you." And then she gives a real short synopsis of what went on. And Natalie, I don't know if you remember, she was the one in the trailer park, and she's kind of the outcast, but she becomes. You have to see it. At the end, she's the one that has probably become more connected to the group than anybody, because she was always the outcast, and this group has finally accepted her.
Now, I wonder, anybody who hasn't read the book or heard why you wrote this and how you wrote it, every character is a compilation of stories that you have seen. It's not one particular character you've written about. So each person, like Sean, there wasn't an actual Sean with that exact story that you knew, and so forth. So you have brought together examples of and created these characters to write that book.
Yeah, I think so. And then a book to the play.
From
Actually,
real
right
life
now,
characters.
I'm more excited about the play than I am the book. I have this fantasy of standing in the wings of some high school watching this being put on. It's this kind of my fantasy.
You will. Keep thinking it. It'll happen.
Yeah, it'll be like your kid's school or something like that, And I think what also you could do with it too is, when I was growing up, we had something called readers theater, where it was just like you sit in the classroom and you're just reading the part. You're not actually acting it out. But there's also that opportunity as well in maybe like a mental health classes or health classes, whatever, instead of doing plays. So they could also take it almost like a curriculum and then dissect it and go, okay, and then they can rewrite the end of the stories in different scenarios as well. So that's also another thing that you could do, is go to the health department, or I think there's many different avenues that this could go.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, I'm not, as with the book, this is not about making any money. I don't care if I make any money. This is about getting the word out there. I mean, if you want to know how to put a lot of work into something and makes no money, write a book.
Yeah, exactly. Been there, done that. I like Cari's idea you could have it as a creative venture as well, with a group that where they can create different endings and scenarios and go, and let's talk about it. What would you see this character possibly? Let's write the different endings. I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
So John, what
could be, yeah.
What else would you like to say to parents of teens or almost teens or family members?
I think just back off a little bit, listen to them, watch them, don't push them. Share some of your own feelings about what's going on, because I'm convinced that most of us learn from modeling as much as anything.
Yeah.
And if you can model expressing in a, how do I say this, not an outrageous, but a calm sort of way of how you're going through, what you've experienced when you split up with somebody, whether it's mom or dad, and let them see that the human side of you, and not just the I'm mad because I didn't get alimony this month, or or whatever, that person, whatever,
Right.
whether it's man, just be more human about it. And I think you're more likely to get them to open up to you, and you can chat about it. You can share more stuff, and that's what it's all about. A lot of kids will get through this. Most of them do, with a little luck. And I really think that these years, meaning the young teenage years, are a lot tougher than when they get older. Not that they don't have a tougher time when they're older, but they're just growing up themselves. We talked about it earlier on. They're trying to figure out where they fit in the world. And so back off, give them space. Don't preach to them. Get off the
Everybody
lecture.
else preaches, so give them some space, right? And
You get off the
I think
lecture
it's respect too. I think it's as we're teaching our children as they get older to respect the parents, but I think also in return, we have to respect their space a little bit too. And when we feel like we're hounding them, to back off a little bit and go, I remember. And even apologize. You could say, "Oh, I'm sorry for hounding you."
Just when you were saying it, don't be afraid to apologize when you screw up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I yelled at you when you came in the other night. I was just in this kind of mood because of this and this and this that happened today at work, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. Parents are allowed to have crummy days.
Right.
We all do.
It's true.
We all have.
Yeah. And I think a little explanation sometimes will help the teenagers and help them ease that a little bit and go, okay, mom or dad had just a bad day, and and then
again,
just hug it out. Yeah.
I remember, again, going back to training. You pick up different things that other people use. I remember sitting in meetings and, ooh, that was a really great phrase that person used, and it became part of me. If it works, works.
Yeah.
Take it.
I want to unpack the apology part a little bit, because what that communicates to the kids is respect and value. I see you as a fellow human being. You have feelings. What I said was hurtful. I wasn't showing up as my best self as a parent, or whoever it might be. And please give me some grace. And then that really sees them as, I care about how you feel, or how my actions may have impacted you, and you do really matter.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, it works. It really does. You just got to hit the courage to do it.
Right. Courage is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Courage is a big thing. Young.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, the courage, we have to teach that when they're younger, as so as they get older, they feel more free to talk about things as well. Right. So the sooner you start that, but even if they are a little bit older, I don't think there's never too late of a time to be courageous, but definitely some grace period for sure.
And being aware of a pattern, like if you have a pattern that's happening the way you communicate, and you just being aware and go, wait a minute, we seem to get stuck in this pattern where I try and get them to talk and they won't, and then we're both mad. Like, notice those, interrupt them, and then replace it with something that you've mentioned. And I love, so we talk about those shifts. So let's shift the perspective about who our teens are, and shift how we have our patterns that we fall into. We're exhausted. It's like, I don't want to try something different. But it's not working as well as it could. And one funny thing that popped into my mind when you said use a statement instead of a question.
Mhm.
As Canadians, I want to say that sometimes we add a at the end, and we're like,
Okay.
you're really frustrated, eh? And it like that
Yep.
turns it into a question. So for
Yep,
all you
sure does.
Canadians, let's just
Sure does.
be careful there.
But however, being Canadian, it can go kind of both ways. It's like saying
We
it's like
also say
saying
sorry.
aloha. It's like saying aloha, which means goodbye and hello. So it's kind of one of
Yeah.
those language things where it's like, you know, hey, like you had a rough day. Eh? Yeah, like it's not a, you know,
Okay,
hey,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it can be
So
a question
I
or
think
not.
we can
Yeah.
kind of, you know, give ourselves a bit of a break.
Agree to
there.
disagree on that. Yeah.
Well, my better
Love the
half
tone and how we say it.
has suggested that since I was born in Canada, several people have told me that I have Canadian citizenship since I
yeah.
was born in Canada.
Yes.
You do.
She thinks I should look into that, and I
Yeah.
won't go into the reasons why, but you might just guess.
Well, I think
Yeah.
if you're going to be touring your play, then
You're
you need
welcome.
to have it. Like, just saying that, you know, there's a lot
And
of
it can be a
wonderful
Canadian production.
theaters. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
things aren't friendly down here these days.
We got a
well,
connection. We got connections for you up here, John.
we know people
We know people who know people.
People
and
who
they know
people who know
people.
people. Okay.
We know a lot of the peoples.
The other thing us
Yeah.
Canadians do is we're pretty good at apologizing. We stick sorry word in there, whether it's necessary or not. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
let's aim it towards our teens with true compassion and authenticity. And I think we're going to see a difference in the atmosphere in our homes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you so much for being with
thank
us,
you for
John.
having me. And maybe somewhere down the road, you know how to get in touch with me. If you ever want to do
Yep.
something again, just contact me. Well, because I enjoy this and
Yeah.
anything to get the word out. And you know, if this
Absolutely.
play ever gets off the ground, you both of you will certainly hear about it, and we'll go from there.
I'll be at the premiere.
Yes, we will. We expect an
In my
invitation.
basement,
We've
you
got
mean?
our sparkly gowns already.
Oh, sparkly gowns to match my backdrop.
Yeah. And let's make sure, Cari, that we include the link. We have it on our website for the show for John's book, but we also
Yeah.
some contact information for John that we'll include when
Okay.
we post this replay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. We can do that. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you, John. I think,
Well,
you know,
good.
anytime you want to come back, there's another topic that's kind of in conjunction with it. I mean, why not come back
Okay.
and let's talk. Anybody that's watching the show as well, or now we're on the replay, if you have any questions and you want John back as well, then by all means, you know, reach
Actually,
out to us.
We've got a couple minutes. If there's anybody watching that wants to drop a question in the comments, we can ask John right now live.
Yeah, come on, guys, let's go.
No
What do you
pressure. I'm just
do
stating that you have a
when-
question.
What do you
I
do when
see
your
that you have
teens
a
don't
question.
want to do anything? You know, when the kids get lazy, that teenage lazy stage, what do we do? There we go. There's a good question.
I didn't quite understand. What was it again?
When our teenagers are really super lazy and they don't want to do anything.
Well, you know, first of all, if it's school stuff, I'll start with that. Let them face the consequences. You know, don't do it for them. If they choose to screw up a class or screw up a test or not do a project, there's natural consequences that come in place. I am a firm believer, and we did this with our own kids, that kids have responsibilities around the house. Whether it's chores or other types of things, kids have responsibilities. And you know, you don't do what you're supposed to do. Well, maybe something. And I'm not threats, but you know, this is the price. You know, growing up, we always had to cut the grass. When we were big enough to push the lawnmower, we had to cut the grass. And there was no, you know, and I'm just to get a little bit off an end, which sometimes works for kids. I think kids should get an allowance. I'm totally, but then you don't pay for all the extra stuff either. They don't come in on Friday night and say, "Dad, all my friends are going to the movies now. I don't have any money. Can you give me 20?" No, we gave you a reasonable allowance. Learn how to budget your money, and so you can pay for your stuff. You know, your normal stuff. Granted, there's some things which kids can never save enough money for. But you know, routines are really important for kids. And don't follow the routines. Okay, then maybe X, Y, and Z doesn't happen anymore. don't fret. This is just the way it is.
Yeah.
Just like you don't study for the test, and you got a D on it, and you're normally an A student. Well, guess what? You didn't study. Oops.
Yeah.
You learn.
Oopsies. Yeah. Yeah. And responsibility, I think, is a big one too. I know one of my favorite things to do as my children were getting older was they wanted the bigger, like an Xbox, or they wanted an
Sure.
Xbox game or things like that. We did the same thing where, you pay half of it and
Sure.
we'll pay the other half,
Yeah.
just to kind of match it. And then they had, that discipline, but they also had that motivation. They're like, okay, this is like, oh, I feel better that mom and dad are going to help out or do whatever. So yeah, I think that's a big one. So Anna's got a question here. John, what is your favorite memory during your 30-year career?
Oh my gosh, my favorite.
You started
memory.
as a teenager,
Well, actually,
so
it was a 40-year career. I don't know if I had a. Well, I can tell you one. I mentioned about the kindness project. The other thing, which was one of my favorites, which was very similar. We started a peer mediation program at one at a middle school, and it was about watching the youngsters grow up, because we trained kids in the 8th grade to do mediations for anybody 6th or 7th grade. And in the training process, we treated them as if you or I were to go to a workshop to do something. They literally went to a separate location, and we had them for 2 days.
wow.
And we treated them like adults, and most of them began to take their responsibility very much like adults. And that was, we actually won a state award in the state of Ohio for that particular program. And that was just cool. I mean, and it wasn't that, oh wow, we won a award. It was watching those kids take the responsibility, just like the kids in the kindness project did, and watching them grow with it and take ownership and push it in the building. Because there was a little bit of faculty resistance, because quite frankly, it's easier for a science teacher if she sees 2 kids arguing in the hallway, just to go up and break it up and get them done with.
Principal's office.
But it's harder to say, I'm going to take the time and refer these kids to a peer. And there was no adult in the room where the mediation took place. The adult was sitting outside. It was the 2 kids, 2 mediators, and whomever was. We always put them in there as a pair to do the mediation.
Yeah. And I would like to connect with you more about the Kindness Project, as she has 2 teenagers in a junior high in leadership club. Is there anything you can share about the program and have kids carry it forward?
I don't know. If you'd like,
Anna, you stumped him.
You could give these folks my email address, and I'd be happy to communicate it with talk to them via email. And maybe more than that, but it's hard to think what I would do. First of all, you got to have a staff member that buys into it. Whether and it doesn't have to be a counselor or a psychologist; it can be a teacher.
Yeah.
And then the next thing, which is really, really absolutely crucial, is you got to have staff buy-in. And when I ran the mediation program and the kindness project, I had individual meetings with every teacher in the building. I literally went around on their plan belts and, hey, we're thinking about doing this. I'd like your input. And I would say that in a kindness project, I probably had 90% buy-in. In the peer mediation program, I probably had 80% buy-in to start off.
We could probably also not just do it in schools, but you could also do it in maybe your own communities, in your cities as well. That's, I think, another opportunity there too. Yeah.
There's lots of stuff out there. I mean, in terms of, I'm
curious.
I like that.
I'm curious, John. Go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm curious about how often you've had, I've asked, Anna asked, how many, you've had a lot of requests. I'm thinking that people would like to be able to replicate this. And, that's maybe while you're waiting to hear about your production in theater, you could maybe please put this together so that it could be
module
shared.
Yeah.
So it could be shared.
We'll chat. Let me think about that.
I think, that's why we all have this, that lady walking in, this is your purpose. Well, there's other purposes to our purpose as well, right?
A
It's
lot of
true.
purpose in that
It
word.
really
Yes,
is true. And it unfolds as we go along doing what we love doing,
yeah.
right? And like we said, we're not out there for the money or this or that, but
Yeah.
it's more for the children and just them learning and growing and how to be kind to others or how to
Mhm.
talk to others. And I mean, we're here to make this planet a little bit nicer, I think, right?
Well,
So let's all work together as a
yeah.
community doing that,
And
right?
I mentioned a little earlier when we were talking about the kindness project that
Yeah.
COVID just screwed it up royally, because we went in that whole first year from September through March 16th when they sent us all home, and we were ready to go back in for the next group the next year, but we weren't allowed in classrooms,
Yeah.
so we just didn't. And that second year, we were going to have the kids challenge the teachers
Nice.
in terms of sitting down with teachers and saying, Mrs. So and so or Mr. So and so, we've been doing this kindness project, but why do you keep yelling so much?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted, because there were certain teachers in the building that bought into it entirely. Even though I said they had 90% buy-in to do it, some of the staff did not buy into it in changing their behavior and how they treated people in the classroom.
Yep.
That was step 2, which we never got to, because then by the third year, when we were allowed back in classrooms, it had lost its thunder. It just had,
Yeah.
it was, and then I retired.
Yeah. But see, you already have this module set up and you have, like you said, there's a part 1 and then there's like a part 2 to it. And I really do think like this is a very educational piece that you are doing. And I think it will totally help so many communities and families and like, and not just schools and not just, communities, but I mean, we're talking like this could even go into like a healthcare system. It could be mental health communities. It could be, just, and there's so many scenarios that this could be used in that can help so many people. And just like we said, at the very beginning, we're always looking at one tunnel, like, oh, the teens, this. But in fact, it's like, no, the teenagers are here to actually kind of teach us something in a way, like have more compassion, be more gentle on ourselves, be gentle to others. And, like they're not just lumps sitting on a sofa, right? So yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah. How do you expect the kids to treat each other nice when you're not treating the kids nice?
Yeah.
I think
Do as I say, not as I do.
I think your heart is in such a beautiful place, John, and you're creating a legacy, whether you mean to or not, already with the children and the lives that you've touched, and how it can ripple out. And I think we're nudging you to to give us the opportunity to do more with that.
We'll see. We'll play around with it.
I mean, you're on my show twice. This is the third time's the charm here. So we're just saying, putting it out there. So, yeah.
And if anybody has comments that they would like to add when they're watching the replay, please drop them in the comment boxes, and also reach out to John, reach out to us, let us know what you thought or if you have questions.
No problem at all. It works.
It does work. Thank you.
Okay.
That was wonderful. Thank you, John. Yeah, just let us know anytime you want to come back on and we'll have you on and discuss a little bit more if there's something else that pops in your mind that you would like to, talk about with, the situation with the teen, whatever. Like we'll fit it in because the shift always happens here. So we'll figure it out. We figure the shift out all the time.
Happen. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sounds great. It was great seeing both of you again, and somewhere down the road we'll do this again, and maybe after I play around with this kindness project thing, I'll send you each an email and give you my yes, no, well, maybe where I think things may or may not go.
I just want a copy in my mail going, this is what the final product is, and I'll be like, hey, told you.
Let's get the final product that'll play first. That I hate to say it, keep going back to that, but that has been my focus for, I wrote it in 4 months, and now it's sitting there, and it's driving me crazy.
Well, you got to get your mind off of it and work on something else while it happens. So we're just saying.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
God grant me patience, but please hurry.
Yeah, well, especially since one of the individuals I know very well.
All right, so we're
Thanks so
back
much,
in 2
John.
weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. We're back in 2 weeks with the Next Shift Happens show, and it's going to be fun, just like all the rest. And we're going to be talking about new shift. Do we have a guest in our next one? I can't remember. Oh, yes, it's the Valentines. We're just talking
it's our
Valentine's.
Valentine. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be.
Show your teenagers some love. Give them some Valentines this year too. I think that would be sweet. Take them on a little Valentine's date. Oh, you can get those heart-shaped pizzas. That would be kind of cute, I think. Family some love, right?
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
We will talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there we go. The shift happens, right, Deena? That was a wonderful show. Teenage shift,
Amazing.
and then the Valentine shift coming up, and that's going to be cool. If you guys have questions you want us to touch up on the Valentine show, it's a non-censored one.
Some suggestions. Either love it or you hate it or you don't care.
Right?
It all counts. How can we shift our perspective on it on the V-Day?
Right. I've got some words, but we'll have to save that.
Well, we'll save it because we get to go back to being unfiltered for the V-Day
I know.
one.
Yeah, it'll be.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us. And we are over now.
Over now. Good night. Good night. Bye. But I can't even say good night. It's only 5 o'clock here, but in your time zone, I don't know.
I'm at 6 o'clock. Adios.
Oh, okay. Right. Adios, amigos.
Back to the pool.